He described their childhood at the dinner table last Christmas. She sat very still and said nothing. He was telling a story about their father. A warm story, the kind that makes people at a table smile softly, lean forward slightly, and say, "I didn't know that about him." She knew that about him. She also knew the rest of it, the part nobody at the table had ever heard before. The slammed doors, the long silences, the evenings where everyone measured his mood before speaking, the fear that entered rooms before he did. But her brother's version contained none of that. Only the warmth, only the stories safe enough to survive public retelling. She sat there holding a glass of water with both hands. She remembers that clearly. The glass was cold, voice calm. She focused on the cold because it was the only thing in the room that felt entirely accurate. Dark psychology has a name for what her brother was doing. It is called history rewriting, not lying, not fabrication, something far more psychologically complicated. Selection, omission, memory shaped carefully enough that the painful parts slowly disappear, while the comforting parts become the entire story. And the terrifying thing about history rewriting is this: the person doing it usually believes every word. They had grown up in the same house, the same hallway, the same parents, the same difficult evenings. And somehow they had emerged with childhoods so different they sounded like two unrelated families. Even as children, she noticed it. She would describe something painful, and her brother would look at her with genuine confusion, as if he honestly had no idea what she meant. And slowly, over years, that confusion began doing something to her mind. She started wondering if she was remembering things incorrectly, if maybe she was too sensitive, too emotional, too focused on the negative. She had learned very early in life that her version of events was the version most likely to be overruled. Dark psychology explains this through enmeshment and motivated cognition. Memory is not a recording, it is reconstruction, and reconstruction bends itself around emotional survival. Her brother needed their childhood to have been good, needed the frightening moments to become smaller over time, needed the father who intimidated them both to transform into a complicated but lovable man people could speak warmly about during holidays. And because he needed that version badly enough, his mind built it carefully. Voice softer. If you have ever sat in a room listening to a sibling describe the childhood you both survived, and felt the strange loneliness of hearing your own history become unrecognizable. If you have ever nodded quietly while someone erased the exact moments that shaped you most, not because you agreed, but because disagreeing would immediately make you difficult, then you already know the exhaustion of carrying a truth nobody else wants to hold. At first, she tried correcting him, carefully, gently. "I remember that differently. That's not exactly how it happened for me. Do you remember what happened after that?" Every time, the same reaction. Not anger, not cruelty, confusion, real confusion. As if she were the one distorting reality, as if her memories themselves were symptoms. Her sensitivity, her inability to move on, her tendency to focus on painful things. So eventually, she stopped correcting him. Not because his version became true, because defending her own memory was slowly destroying her trust in herself. And nothing ever changed anyway. The reunion happened 2 years later. A birthday dinner, long table, careful smiles. The familiar performance families maintain when everyone silently agrees not to disturb the structure holding the room together. And then her brother told the story again. The exact same story. Almost word for word. And the new people at the table leaned forward in exactly the same way, smiling, interested, saying, "I didn't know that about him." She put down her fork, and for the first time in decades, she stopped protecting everyone else from discomfort. She said quietly, "I remember it differently." Voice barely above. The entire table went still, The kind of silence that appears when something irreversible has just entered the room. Her brother looked at her. She looked back. And for once, she did not rush to soften herself, did not explain, did not apologize, did not provide evidence for her own life. She simply allowed her version to exist publicly. I remember it differently. Then she picked up her fork, finished dinner, and drove home alone. She did not feel victorious. She did not feel relieved. She felt accurate. Her brother called a week later. He said she embarrassed him, said she always made things complicated, said she could never let go of the negative parts. She listened quietly, then said, "I hear you, but I'm not going to tell you I misremember, because I don't." The relationship changed after that, not dramatically, just honestly. More distance, less performance, fewer conversations built around pretending. And strangely, the distance felt healthier than the closeness ever had, because she finally stopped carrying the burden of making everyone else comfortable with her silence. She stopped attending the gatherings where truth required disappearance, stopped volunteering herself for emotional erasure just to preserve the illusion of family harmony. And slowly, for the first time in her adult life, she stopped doubting her own memory every time someone else spoke with more confidence than she did. If you are the sibling carrying the version nobody else in the family wants to acknowledge, if you have spent years wondering whether your memory is the damaged one simply because it hurts more, hear this carefully. The person who needs to rewrite history is the person who cannot emotionally survive it as it truly happened. And the person who remembers clearly is not the broken one. You do not need agreement to validate your reality. You do not need the table to go silent. You do not need everyone else to finally admit what happened. You only need to stop abandoning your own memory every time someone else presents theirs more comfortably. They grew up in the same house. He remembers the version he needed. She remembers the version that happened, and she has finally stopped confusing the two.